Welcome to Bert's Garage, a YouTube miniseries dedicated to building an Exocet out of a fully functioning Mazda Miata. We're going to be pulling apart a 1999 NB and building one hell of an Exocet. You guys better strap in and hold on. This is going to be one hell of a ride. And first to arrive is Bert, avid YouTuber and 3D printing enthusiast. He likes big guns and he likes to go fast. And the next member of our team to arrive is Doug, all-around Miata expert and good guy to have on your side when you're working on a Miata, because he's never wrong, and he reminds you because he's never wrong. And last but not least to arrive is John, Miata expert, turbo expert, good all-around mechanic, and the guy you want to talk to about boost. You want to go fast? He's the guy to talk to, especially in a Miata. And now that you've met our team,
first things first, we're going to need tools and supplies. Here we have a bolt organizer, very, very important. It has 4 individual trays with several individual little pockets to put things. Make sure you label everything, because if you don't label things, you're gonna have a bad day. Second, really big stuff up top or really awkward things like camber bolts and things that are too big to fit in those. Obviously, you want to individually bag them and keep them together, or you're gonna have a bad day. Make sure you keep these in some sort of an order, that way so when you start rebuilding, you can work your way backwards from where you started. Now let's move on to tools that we're going to need. We're going to need a Master Mechanic tool set here. We have 1/4 inch, 3/8, and 1/2 inch drive. We're going to need sockets ranging from 27 millimeters all the way down to 8 millimeters, I think, is the smallest we need. All 6-point sockets, otherwise you're going to end up rounding bolts, and that's going to be a really bad thing, as well as a large breaker bar. Then we're going to need screwdrivers, from flathead and Phillips head screwdrivers all the way down to the smallest ones for those pesky trim pieces, an impact driver, impact bolt, universal joints, painter's tape, magnetic trays for your bolts, deep well sockets, needle nose pliers, dikes, a larger pair of dikes, and a flashlight. And now that we've got that figured out, let's get to work.
Okay, so what we're doing here at this point is we are trying to clean up the engine because, well, you're going to be able to see this thing a lot more than when it was in the Miata. So what we've done is we've sprayed down the engine block with some degreaser, and we're kind of working into it here with a nice little nylon bristle brush. So that way we can get in here and get some of this, 150,000 miles worth of crud off of this engine. We've done everything else. We've powder coated these subframes, the control arms, all that type of stuff. They're going to look pretty. We kind of want this thing to look a little bit presentable too. So we're going to go through, we're going to clean this up, and then after we get in here, let it soak, scrub it off a little bit. We're going to go in and we're going to spray and clean this off, and we're going to see where it stands. Once we get that far, we're going to see if we need to do it again. We want to make this thing presentable. So from this point here, clean up the engine, and then we're going to start reassembling the subframe. We'll start with the motor mounts, we'll get subframe under it, and reassemble the front.
Alright, so what we've done is we've hit it with engine degreaser. It's just regular gunk. Spray it on, wait about 15 minutes, and then come back with simple brake parts cleaner here. And you can see, this looks like brand new. It looks fantastic. And under here we can actually see the BP engine block code, which is really cool. We didn't even think that that was going to be there. Our steering pump looks brand new. It literally has just cleaned all of the unwanted composites completely off the engine. And think of this also as this is actually weight savings too, because you're getting rid of all this crap that's now down here and up here, and it just makes it look, oh, it's so delicious. You don't want to eat off the engine block, but you probably could. I wouldn't suggest it though. At this point, we're going to do a little bit more cleaning and housework, but definitely suggest you clean up your engine block as well as everything else down the line. That way so you're not working with a whole bunch of dirty parts and that. And also having a clean engine block is kind of like good cable management. It's a good idea because generally you go to hell if you don't do good cable management.
So anyways, what we've got here now, we've been cleaning the engine block, and you can see probably from some previous stuff that you've been watching, this guy here is looking a lot different than it was before. We've kind of done what we could, at least for the time being, and we're going to be happy with it for now, and we're going to grumble about it later, but we're going to move on. So moving on here, we are going to start with the motor mounts, and what we've got here, these are the AWR motor mounts. I believe these are the 75A durometer ones with poly bushing. Well, the AWRs get rebranded as a couple of different names. 949 calls these the Super Miata, but they're all the same thing. These are the AWR mounts, and there are a lot of cautions in this. Number one, it's going to rattle everything, so make sure you're always double checking torque on bolts, things of that nature, after you get these guys on. So starting with the passenger side, because this is the one that matters, the other one is pretty much just put it on as you saw it. You'll see that this guy here has one extra nut welded onto it. This only applies to certain models. There's certain like intake manifolds or something that bolt to this extra nut. In our case with the 99-2000 BP4W, not gonna matter. This side also has one bolt that's longer than the rest, and that guy is gonna go down in this bottom right corner when we attach it to the side of the engine block. So what we've got here is we've got a couple of 14mm bolts, then we're gonna have 19s across for the main, and then the bottom guy I believe is a 17, but we're not gonna worry about this or these until we get this realigned into the subframe and get that dropped underneath. Now that the motor mounts are attached on here, and what we've done is we've actually put them onto the engine block and we've torqued them on there, so that way we've got, you know, something that we don't have to really deal with later till we actually get in, test everything out, and then recheck all of our torques. So we're gonna go down and you'll see here that the motor mount is currently installed here. This is the passenger side one, and the driver side one is done exactly the same, so just make sure your 3 bolts are set in correctly. Now what we're going to be doing, our next step is we're going to lift this up, and we're going to use our engine hoist here. We're going to lift everything, we're going to move out from underneath, and we're going to bring our front subframe in and align it up underneath the motor mounts and get those attached on there via those 2 bottom bolts.
Now, obviously, we've been working with cleaner, and cleaner can destroy things, and given that the subframe was just powder coated, we want to make sure that our hands and gloves are nice and clean so we don't ruin the beautiful new finish. Alright, so now we've got the subframe here. What the hell is that?
Sockets. I just kicked the socket.
Alright, hand it under. I got it. Alright, baby. And
Okay, so what you're going to need to do...
man, I got my steering pump cable or hoses here.
You're fine.
It goes into the middle one, right?
It goes into the slot.
I got it. Right. Hang on. I got mine somewhat in.
Because then there is 2 little posts on the motor mount that will align with the bottom hole, and they'll align into the top of the slot. And these are nylon locking, so you're going to get it threaded partway on, and then that's going to stop.
Yep. And I can't say this enough, get a set of good deep well sockets. You're gonna need them. So what we got here is we got the subframe mounted. That looks, god damn, that looks good. She's going back together, obviously. And then obviously at this point we can also go ahead and remount the steering attachment and the steering rack just to kind of get it up and out of the way for the rest of the components. And then pretty much all we gotta do now is put on the arms, right?
So yeah, now that we have the subframe on there, we'll get the steering rack remounted, and then we're going to take the upper and lower control arms, get those into the subframe, and kind of start getting the knuckles all reassembled. So we're going to get this front end back to looking like it came out of a car.
And at this point, you can see the steering rack is now reattached with the 4 very, very cumbersome, not so cumbersome bolts that go in there. It just reattaches straight through the threads and works really, really nicely. Now, whenever we had... whenever we had this powder coated, I asked the powder coater, hey, can you just do a light sort of spritz powder coating where the threads are? That way so we don't have to like clean them out or anything like that. Make sure you ask for that just to be on the safe side if you do get your subframe powder coated, because not everyone will do it. They'll just hose it down. And make sure you also, anything that has threads extended from it, get those taped. Yeah, so you're not, again, cleaning off anything and trying to rethread nuts and bolts. How are we looking here, Doug?
Well, it looks like we got a subframe and a steering rack reattached. So you can see down through here, you know, where the motor mount's attached, and they need to line up flush down through here. If it's sitting with a space, it's because the 2 tabs that stick out are not aligned with the holes in the slot underneath. And the steering rack needs to align perfectly flat and even. It is kind of at its forward kilter angle, but it needs to be flat down on that, so that way your steering can be set correct later with all of the different alignment stuff that you are inevitably going to need to do. And moving on to the front suspensions, the upper control arms here, and these guys are the ones that had the really, really long bolt. So remember, you needed these. They have a series of washers on them, one large one out at the end at the head of the bolt. It's going to go in through the front side, through the subframe out to the other, and then you've got a large and small washer followed by a nut on the end. So all you're going to do is you're going to take
the new moogs that we put on here. And
yeah. So, and we also had press fitted onto here some Moog upper ball joints with grease fittings on these. Our upper ones were questionable at best, and we figured since we're going to do this, we want to do it right, we want to do it once. So that all went together like such. We can change our focus from the upper control arm down to the lower control arm. So we are going to take one of our lowers, and this looks to be the driver's side one, so I need the passenger side. You'll note the difference between the two by where your shock mount is, and your shock mount is going to be the most forward point. So all you need to do then is you're going to take this guy and you're going to kind of work your way in, and these suspension bushings are going to make this a little bit more difficult than you'd honestly like, but this will slide in, and then you'll take your camber bolts that you marked earlier, and they're going to slide in, and you're going to get everything back together that way, and from there we can move back to getting the upper control arms reassembled.
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take this bad boy, and it slides on there and it fits perfectly. So we'll take this big bolt always facing backwards of the car, and slide her on through, and just like that, we got a nice tight fit. You've got your big washer, you got big washer, little washer, and your nut. Go ahead and put those on the back. And then you're going to have, I believe it's a 21. Yep, it's a 21 millimeter, so you're going to want to torque the hell out of this thing, because if this comes loose, you're going to have a bad day. So here we have our front wheel hubs, and now we have no ball joint attachments or anything plugged into this yet. What we ended up doing is we just took this and we sanded the hell out of it, hit it with a wire wheel, and then we spray painted it with high temp black enamel. So get some kind of a ceramic enamel, don't just use regular spray paint because it will come off. And for the bottom ball joint, we went ahead with AC Delco part. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just show you that because I don't feel like saying all those long numbers in that. But what this is the lower ball joint, this guy right here, and all this does is it fits in right down here. It just fits in right there, and it looks like we're actually going to have to, oh, never mind, it fit in just perfect. So we go ahead and we put that in. There's a bolt that goes in from the bottom, and then we'll pound all the pressure fitments into that, and we'll have ourselves a front wheel hub. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, let's do it. Now, when you start fitting these things in, you've got these, what are these called? Castle nut?
Yep.
So whenever you start putting all these things in here, you'll notice that the shaft where the castle nuts are attached to, they're actually beveled. So it's made to be a pressure fit, so they can only go in one way. Make sure whenever you tighten those things down that everything sits nice and smooth. And whenever you're done with your castle nut, make sure you obviously put the pin in and you fold it back and tighten it so that it doesn't ever come up. Because if that ever happens, you're going to have a bad day. All right, so as we can see here, obviously upper ball joint, thank you sir, lower ball joint, and then steering control arm. So in essence, you can pretty much figure out that it only goes one way, like that. So make sure you obviously don't get these like switched up at all on your car. If you put these on in the wrong order, like backwards, which it can actually happen, you're gonna feel like an idiot. So on these, it says right and left. So that should be fairly self-explanatory as to which side of the car is the right and which side's the left. All right, so at this point, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna remove all these castle nuts. And they are all different sizes, so they're not gonna like accidentally go on the wrong one. So just don't lose any of them. Make sure you have your pins as well. And then we're gonna go ahead, and we're gonna take this bad boy, and we're gonna set it down on the bottom one. We're gonna bring the brake, or I'm sorry, not the brake, the steering one down here, and set it up. There we go. And then we're gonna bring her on up and fit her into the top one. So we'll wanna do the top one here first, then we'll take the steering one, bring that up, fit in there, there we go. Castle nut on there. And then the bottom one, you're gonna wanna get it back in there if it slid out, and slide it on up. So, there we go. We've actually got the whole hub assembly put on there. Then all you gotta do basically is tighten down these 3 castle nuts, take your pins, put them in, fold them back, and you should be good. Now, if your control arms here, we try to get these as close as possible to being accurate. Obviously, if these need to be changed, it's probably a good idea to take this to a good, reputable shop and have them do a full alignment on everything. So if they need to, unfortunately, pull these out and spin these a little bit to get you a proper alignment, that's fine. It shouldn't be too much trouble for them because they know what they're doing. So don't worry about getting it perfect. Obviously, when we take this to get the enhanced inspection, we'll probably end up having them, more than likely. do a full alignment if they can there. That way, so we're not driving it around with a bad alignment, or our camber's all messed up and all that. And we'll go from there. So at this point, we're going to tighten these down, put our pins in, and then probably put on the brake rotors and calipers. All right, so the brackets on these are exactly the same, but the calipers say L and R. Doesn't really matter which one you put with which. Just make sure you get everything nice and lubed up and tight. So I'm going to take these cushions here, get these remounted properly. Take the bolts here off the back. Go ahead and take these. Now we sprayed these down, cleaned them up, sanded them, and then we hit them with a ceramic red paint, which will be very high heat tolerant and will work very good for what we're doing. Now one thing that's worth mentioning, the back bolt here and the front bolt, these are both loose. So the back bolt here should be a 14 and the front one should be a clearly larger of a size than the one that I grabbed. Yep, it's a 17. So when putting these back together, make sure these are nice and tight, because if your bolt creeps out on this, it's going to end very badly. Can't exactly tell you what'll happen, but you're not going to like it. And you've got one upgraded front caliper. Now remember, these are actually different calipers than the ones that are over here that were from stock. These are from a Mazda 2000, about a 2003 probably, or an MSM. These are actually going to be exactly the same as far as mounting, but they're going to use substantially larger brake rotors, which is going to have obviously increased braking power. You can get these from a lot of junkyards or online. It's considered a pretty standard upgrade kit for the 1.8 if you have like an early 2000 or 99 model. So I would suggest getting these if you'd like more braking power. Now we're going to go ahead and watch Doug install it.
And all we're going to be doing here then is you'll have your two bolts that you use to remove the caliper from the car originally, and these are going to be 14 millimeter, and they are just going to pop in from the back side through the knuckle over to the brake caliper upright bracket, and we're just going to spin these in by hand first so that way we don't cross thread anything. And keep in mind, these two have some pretty long threads, so you're going to be working at this for a little bit while you try and get it completely through. Not a great place to really fit an impact in back here, so it's just the labor of love of that eighth of a turn at a time until you get her all completely reconnected. So also bear in mind, you'll note that we're putting on the rotor, we're putting on the caliper, everything else like that. We've not put in the brake pads. We're going to do that later once we get things kind of back on the ground and reassembled. So we're going to worry about the brake pads as we get further into this.
Well, I think that's it.
Let's go ahead and see what we got. We got a front end here. Oh, this thing's spinning nice.
Nice and smooth.
Nice and smooth. Let's go ahead and get a long picture here. Hot damn, we got ourselves a fully functional roller skate.
Well, it was to start with,
Yeah.
and now it kind of almost is again.
Think we can drive it like this?
Anything's possible with enough time and patience.
God damn, that looks.
I mean, this is kind of in Flintstone territory right now, but
We'll let John take care of it at that point then.
he's too excited about that.
Yeah, really. Well, guys, at this point, we're gonna have to start filling the show with a bunch of shenanigans until the kit shows up. So, any ideas?
Shenanigans include we got a clutch to put in.
Oh yeah.
We do have a Happy Meal to put in.
And we have gaskets. We got some gaskets and maintenance we need to do,
Yes.
so we're going to be doing some refreshing on everything here. We're going to be removing some unnecessary components as far as things we'll no longer need. We're still going to be working on the shell as it sits right here, but at this point, we're working on this shell and maximizing everything that we can up to the point that we get the full kit that is going on top of what we have pretty close to finished assembling today.
So obviously that means like new hoses. We're gonna do an EGR delete most likely, and a couple other things.
Get rid of this nonsensical contraption of hate.
Yeah, there's some fuel components that we no longer need, really, or that aren't necessary, so we're just going to go ahead and delete those, and we'll
Obviously make a very detailed video on how to do all that so you don't screw it up. And yeah, we got a fully functional roller skate. We just gotta do a little bit more housekeeping and we should be pretty good to go. And that's where we're going to leave the episode for today off, everybody. We have made a lot of progress in a relatively short amount of time. In all honesty, the reassembly has been very, very easy, and I'm quite happy with that fact, to be perfectly honest, because pulling stuff apart constantly does get old after a while. But we got the front subframe put back together.
We got the bushings put in, we got the wheels on, and I'll tell you what, it is really cool to walk out there in the shop and see that. What we're going to do now is I'm just going to kind of lead out this episode and say everyone have an awesome Thanksgiving. Stay safe. If you are traveling, watch out for the idiots on the road. There's plenty of them. And yeah, that's about it. I'm Bert from Pixel Armory. Do stay tuned. There's going to be some stuff after the credits here. And thank you to our Patreon subscribers. And stay tuned, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bert out. If you're a fan of Pixel Armory and Bert's Garage, feel free to become a Patreon subscriber, just like our good friend Patrick O'Connor and Nico Dache. Thanks, guys. I'll see you later.